You just have to stop asking questions, okay? We went through all this trouble of creating a politician. We gave her a fake last name of Luna, Latin for moon. So everything she says about outer space, you have to take seriously. We put her in a swimsuit so you guys would lust after her. And when she goes on Fox News and says there's interdimensional beings, you have to believe her, okay? This is how it works. Let's listen in now to Anna Polina Luna.
Florida, Anna Polina Luna. She is chair of the Oversight Committee Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets. She has said that there is evidence of interdimensional beings that can operate through the time spaces that we currently have, which is obviously going to catch a lot of people's attention. Anna Polina Luna, thank you very much, Congressman. It's good to have you with us today. I want to go back to that. You told Joe Rogan in a podcast in August when you were discussing all of this that you have viewed evidence of interdimensional beings here on Earth and that they operate through the time spaces that we currently have. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think that a good example would be some of the photo visual evidence that we've seen directly in some of these classified briefings that will now be made public. One of the famously now, infamous videos that we showed in one of our hearings was actually a video that was dead dropped to Eric Burleson, who's a member of Congress, from within the Department of War, and it shows a UAP, an unidentified air phenomena, deflecting a Hellfire missile. This was taken off of ISR footage off the coast of, I believe it was Yemen. So long story short, there have been briefings that we've received as Congress that leads us to believe that, yes, there is definitely an advanced technology out there that's not created by mankind. And yes, of course, we've seen other evidence where it could potentially be UAPs, and then we later find out that there's drones. But there is a certain amount of evidence that we simply can't explain. Some of the physics that are defied in how these vehicles operate are very interesting to note. And we are not the only government that's looked into this extensively. But I really do look at this from a lens of national security. And as you know, as we continue to evolve specifically on the front of AI and drone technology, we have to ensure that are these things, whatever they may be, are they potential adversarial weapons, advanced weapons, or not? And I think the whole aspect that the federal government can deny access to members of Congress, of which has happened not just to myself, but to other members of Congress as well, is not just alarming, but it's also something that cannot truly exist in a free and fair society. Government should not operate in secrecy. And so I look forward to the American people being able to determine their own conclusion.
I agree that they shouldn't be operating in secrecy. Absolutely. And shout out to Rep Burleson, we did a great culture war with, maybe it was about a year ago now, with the great Tony Merkel from the Confessionals. That was a lot of fun. Got to ask a lot of questions. I wish we did another 5 hours of that episode. But there she is once again claiming this idea of interdimensional beings. And to me, that just sounds like demons. That's my interpretation of a lot of this, and that they are trying to sell the public on a narrative of something different, something that is unbiblical. And when thinking about how they talk about the traveling of interdimensional beings, this is what Anna Polina Luna has been talking about. They can travel through the space-time continuum. They can she shared a picture recently on her a diagram on her Twitter the other day that looked like space-time folding in, as if to allude to the fact that these beings that she keeps talking about are able to punch a hole through the folded time-space continuum, and that's how they travel around. Well, I think that sounds like demons. And it reminded me of, one of my favorite books in the Bible is Job. I think it's one of the best to remember, why we suffer, the value in suffering, what it means, the things we don't understand that happen in heaven. And, Job goes through quite a bit. There's a lot of suffering. And in the beginning of the book of Job, we see a devil and the Lord talking. And when I think of demons traveling around, I often think of this quote from Job. The Lord said to Satan, "From where have you come?" Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth and from walking up and down on it. It's just such a evocative line, of constant moving and trying to undo the Lord's work in the hearts of humans. And there's this brief thing I want to read just about that phrase, to and fro and up and down. For those of you who've bought my book, and thank you to those who have, Joyless Kingdom, my first book, I have a poem in here about this phrase as well, But I'm going to read this. It's not too long, from Henry Morris. It's from 1994. And the Lord said unto Satan, whence comest thou? This is another bit of a different translation. The Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro in the earth and from walking up and down in it. That is Job 1:7. And Henry said, this remarkable scene in heaven provides us a striking picture of satanic activity. The devil, in his opposition to God and his program of salvation, evidently never rests. So I don't deny the fact that we are seeing things in the sky. And I don't know if Anna Polina Luna, I think she believes in what she says. She says she's Christian, but she has these different interpretations of certain things, and she has referenced the Book of Enoch and Rogan. I wasn't the biggest fan of her interview on Rogan. Just seemed really a lot like Kash Patel's interview. Like you're sent in to help usher in this narrative. But she references in this video I just played for you earlier in the episode, the tic tacs and the things moving really quickly, which make me think of to and fro and up and down, and just this restlessness. And, I think the non-human interactions and activity that we deal with, I think we see them on our screens every day with names like Sam Altman and Peter Thiel, Mark Zuckerberg. I believe they are non-human entities. And if not demons themselves, they are possessed by demons, and the things they are building are ushering in quite demonic activity, as is the case with lots of technology. With all progress comes a lot of bad stuff. Doesn't mean it's all bad, but they know that we use it in very destructive ways. And by they, I mean demons, the devil. So just thinking of that tic tac, like if we've all seen that image of the thing flying up and down through from the sea, or the UFO dodging the Hellfire missile. I think of that to and fro and up and down, this restlessness, this non-human activity. Henry says, the devil in his opposition to God and his program of salvation evidently never rests. He is not omnipresent like God because he is a finite, though very powerful and brilliant created being. To accomplish his goal, therefore, he is never at rest, but keeps going from place to place and working deception after deception, bringing everyone he can under his influence. Also sounds like AI to me. It never sleeps. It's always there. It's restless. It lies quite a bit. Like in C.S. Lewis, it's the demon whispering in your ear the things you want to hear to tempt you, to get you to sin more, and then constantly growing that into worse and worse things. Look, not all of our interactions with AI are like that, but I think as a whole, it is as if they've built this demonic crystal ball that mankind is speaking into and outsourcing so much wisdom to, right? I mentioned last week Proverbs and wisdom. Oh, that was actually on the Nephilim Death Squad, which I don't know if it's out yet, but should be out soon. I know that the first 30 minutes of that podcast are on their YouTube channel, and probably the Rumble as well. Nephilim Death Squad, shout out to Top and Raven. We had a really good time. Did a few hours talking to them last Friday. So that whole thing should be out soon. But on their show, I talked about Proverbs and wisdom and what that means. And a lot of this ties into that conversation of wisdom. What is it? How do we get it? Obviously, I think wisdom comes from God's word. But then these people, as I've been saying constantly on this show, the tech vampires are creating their own wisdom. And that is unbiblical wisdom. It is anti-human wisdom. It is false wisdom. It is wisdom, little lowercase w wisdom, that shackles you to the material world and gets you to buy into their narratives so that you are afraid of the things they want you to fear, to keep you stuck here in the material world, worried about I know we all worry about our day-to-day lives, our bills that we have to pay, but there's so much more that we should be worried about, focusing on eternal life, that these tech vampires want to erase that and then manufacture their own false heaven on this earth, which is demonic. So back to this thing. It's not that very long. I just wanted to go through this really quick to just juxtapose this idea of interdimensional beings, which I think are demons, which now they're rebranding as aliens, the same way they rebranded UFOs to UAPs. And this restlessness, this movement, this activity, the things that we're seeing that we can't understand, that people are interpreting differently, I'm interpreting it as demons, and I believe I'm correct. Therefore, Henry says, God urgently warns us, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. It's a great sample that Kanye used on Wash Us in the Blood. If you don't know the song, check it out. The same is true of the demonic spirits who have followed the devil in his rebellion against God. They never rest until they can take possession of some person's body and mind and then control that person's behavior. Goes into a lot of what we were talking about last week as well. When we're talking about the discombobulator, MK Ultra, brainwashing, the Havana syndrome, mind control, stuff like that, it's another form of demonic activity using technology to control you, to scare you, to steer you psychically. Things that are on record that our government and lots of governments around the world love to do. And this is from Matthew 12:43. When the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places, seeking rest, and findeth none. Then he saith, I will return into my house from whence I came out. This restlessness that characterizes the devil and his demons often also manifests itself in the unsaved, and this will be the ultimate state of those who yield to the pressures of these evil spirits. They have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. Revelation 14:11. Again, can't help but think of the restlessness of the things that we can't identify that float through our skies. I think they're man-made-ish, because I think they're made mostly by Palantir, and Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and that it might be reverse engineered technology that I would say is from ancient breakaway civilizations, which other people might interpret as aliens. We've gone through that before in the past. We don't have to break that whole thing down, but you know what I mean? If you've been listening, that we have ancient civilizations that find a way to survive cataclysms. That's why people, I think, are transhumanists, and that they can have a different sense of time, and pass down this knowledge. We went over that pretty extensively when we were talking about the Rothschilds and Epstein, and how Epstein himself telling Bannon, like, the elites, the ruling class, have a very different concept of time because they expect to live longer. And we've seen very recent examples of that being said on hot mics between Putin and Xi, where they're saying being 80 years old will be like being a baby. Again, this is transhumanism. All right, moving on. I just want to put those out there in contrast, and this idea of, we're really on the edge of this disclosure thing, and the government, they lie about everything unless it's about aliens. Of course, once they start talking about aliens, then we got to believe it. Especially if they trot out, Anna Luna in a swimsuit on Joe Rogan's podcast, and she's got this Luna in her name. We should just believe everything because what are the coincidences? So, I just find it to be suspicious, how I interpret it. I don't think it's how they want us to buy it. The truth that they're going to give us, I don't buy. And then you got to ask yourself why. We're watching conspiracies go mainstream, and that really started during COVID. But then the past 2 years, it really went crazy, especially when people saw what happened in Butler, PA, and then Charlie and his murder. And we're watching in real time our own JFK type situations. And it's very obvious that they as in the FBI and the press, whether it's independent or corporate, they're selling us a narrative that makes absolutely no sense. And we're like, okay, Are they pushing us to all become conspiracy theorists, which is, maybe for the better, but you have to then ask yourself, why? Who does that help? Are they building out a new narrative for the conspiracy theorists who are now becoming mainstream because it's become less taboo to talk about things like aliens or demons? And are they setting that up for that group of people, like more dissident type people, and the conspiracy theorists, though that's a silly phrase, are they being propped up and going to be used to sell another narrative? So an example of that is just, in my opinion, you guys know I like Alex Jones, but he has changed drastically in what he talks about and how he talks about it. So it's like, has he been, I don't know if there's someone who's taken over helping him with his court cases, and he owes a lot of money, and that he's been kind of castrated, from saying the things that he used to say. He used to rail against the transhumanists and the globalists. Those are the people who are clearly in power right now in this country and around the world. And Trump has completely embraced them. And now that they are in charge, I just don't see a lot from Alex saying that. And so has he been co-opted? Does he even realize it? I don't know. I just find it very strange. Alex has been so good to me. I loved doing InfoWars. I have been a fan of his for decades now. But it is interesting to me that the narrative shift has happened within him. And so another example would be, so I don't know why that is, but I think it's clear to anyone who's been following the case. You also saw the way he attacked Candace, which I thought was bizarre. Then you'll see how, and I've talked about this in the past, but worth throwing it in here while we're here, is when certain influencers on Twitter were getting huge paychecks from Elon, and before everyone was getting that payout stuff. And I'm like, okay, why is that happening? And maybe I'm just crazy. Very possible. But why? I'm like, why is that happening? Is it to ingratiate himself into these people so that when he needs them, they will be on his side and use their big platforms to support him, to defend him, which has really, I think, come to fruition for a lot of these accounts. And he's involved with all this stuff too. No matter what he says about Epstein and him saying he's distanced himself from it, he's still, sending these emails, wanting to hang out and go to wild parties on the island, post 2008, which I think is disgusting. So it's always, for me on this show, when I'm reading the news about this kind of stuff, it's like, why? Why are they telling us this now? After so many years of it being taboo, whether it's Epstein, trafficking, aliens, why now? So as we move into this next portion, then think about, well, they've lied about these sorts of things before in the past as well. So then if they've lied about it in the past, why should we believe them now? Especially if they've lied about it in the past when it's lined up to obfuscate other narratives. And I'm saying lying about aliens or UFOs in the past to cause a distraction from some other story. And right now, as we find ourselves in the midst of the Epstein files fallout, even though we've only gotten half of them, there's 3 million released. We're supposed to get another 3 million more, I believe. What happened to those? Who knows? Are we going to get them? That's, crazy that we're not getting them. But there's been a lot of fallout, a lot of people pointing fingers, a lot of people very close to Trump who have been caught in lies. Howard Lutnick, we went over that. Our Commerce Secretary clearly lying about his relationship with Epstein. It's super weird. There's a lot of stuff going on with him. It seems like every day there's a new thing. But to go back to the UFOs, this disclosure, narratives and distractions, I want to just reiterate a story we went over about I guess last summer. Yeah, this came out around June of 2025. So let me get this moved here. You will remember this story. Pentagon planted UFO myths to hide secret weapons programs. The report finds. And this is, June 9th, 2025 from Fox 5. In the shadow of the Cold War, while America raced to outpace the Soviet Union in military innovation, the Pentagon turned to an unexpected tactic: alien conspiracy theories. A newly revealed Department of Defense review shows that the U.S. military deliberately spread UFO rumors, including staged photos and false briefings to protect classified weapons programs. The practice wasn't just passive denial or silence. In some cases, it was policy. One such incident, first uncovered by the Wall Street Journal, involves an Air Force colonel who, in the 1980s, handed fake photos of flying saucers to a bar owner near the top-secret Area 51 base in Nevada. The colonel, now retired, later admitted to investigators that he was acting under official orders to deflect attention away from the then-classified F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter. Now, also, for my skeptics who are with me on our skepticism, perhaps he was told to say that as the cover story because it really was aliens. I mean, you never know. It's just the snake eating itself. It is constant. This is why I love the name of Alex's show, InfoWars. It is information war, which is why we go over this stuff as closely as we can, as it changes constantly. There was something else in there I thought was funny. Oh, it reminded me of Lou Elizondo getting caught in a lie a year or two ago when he was at some alien conference and he shared a photo of an alien mothership hovering over a city, and it turned out like it was AI. So I don't take that guy very seriously. Also, speaking of AI, I'll just throw this out there quickly. If you saw that video going around this weekend or towards the end of last week, when someone thought they saw Ghislaine Maxwell out there in the world, the person who made that video came out and said it was AI. Or Ghislaine held a gun to his head and said, "This was AI. Tell the people it was AI." Who knows? This is the backstory. The findings stem from a 2024 report by the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, that's AARO, a unit created in 2022 to sift through decades of military records and claims of unidentified aerial phenomena. I believe Elizondo was a part of that program. If not him, it was one of those other whistleblowers. I just want to pull that up really quick. That's going to bug me. I believe he was a part of that program. Yeah, real quick. We're doing a side quest real quick, guys. Bear with me. Pentagon appoints, I'm just reading this. Pentagon appoints new UFO office director. The previous director departed during a shakeup at the office. A whistleblower has claimed the Pentagon has a secret UFO retrieval program. The government says there is no evidence UAPs are alien in nature. When is this from? You see how contradictory all this stuff is. This is from just August 2024. Just want to see where Elizondo shows up. Recently, former Pentagon employee Luis Elizondo spoke to News Nation claiming the government recovered a UFO following the famed 1947 Roswell, New Mexico incident. Elizondo also said the Pentagon has recovered non-human remains and that strange implants have been found in human specimens. He was part of ATIP. That's what I was getting wrong. It was a precursor to AARO. And ATIP stands for Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. There it is. This is another quote before I go back to the story. As we have stated previously, Elizondo had no assigned responsibilities for the ATIP program while assigned to the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. So spokesperson Sue Go said. That's right. There's discrepancies with his history. Just like all these whistleblowers, there's always something, but it could be a discredit campaign. I don't know. To me, a lot of these whistleblowers, I just don't seem very trustworthy. I hate to break it to you, but I feel like a lot of you feel the same way. I think I told you guys last week about Corbell and how a lot of the people on the UFO committee recently, like this new one, do not trust him because he got really upset that they took out one of his like marketing little pamphlets for a movie of his. And they're like, well, we don't need it in here. It's not for the record. And do you care more about promotional stuff or do you care more about like the truth? So it was really, I already found him to be not so trustworthy, but that sealed the deal. While the office was originally intended to investigate possible extraterrestrial sightings, much of what it uncovered pointed back at the government itself. You don't say. According to the report, several UFO legends were intentionally stoked to mislead the public and foreign adversaries about advanced weapons programs. One example is the use of fabricated photos and stories placed in local communities near sensitive testing sites like Area 51. The Air Force colonel's fake UFO photos helped launch decades of speculation around Area 51. So you can imagine how they're using AI to trick the people. And that was something I asked Burleson about on the Culture War episode. How do you discern what's even real when you're sifting through all this quote unquote evidence of things people have seen? I mean, so much of it could have been faked. The military saw the spread of alien rumors as a form of camouflage, a Pentagon official said. The disinformation helped obscure the testing of advanced technologies like stealth jets. AARO found multiple examples of fabricated narratives designed to deflect attention from classified work. Is that what's going on now? I think so. I do. Let me know what you guys think. Are we in a distraction campaign, whether it's from the Epstein files or World War III, which we've probably just been in a sustained World War III since the 60s. I heard Ron Paul say that on the Culture War actually a long time ago, and I'm like, he's got a point. He dates World War III starting at the moment they shot JFK. We could all look at different landmarks through time. World War II never really ended. We just absorbed the Nazis and started doing World War III on our own population here with their technology, like MK Ultra. Some events, including specific pranks and altered documents, were redacted from the report. The Pentagon has not released names of individuals involved beyond the now retired colonel. At least a dozen personnel were reportedly introduced to a fictional alien investigation program called Yankee Blue as part of a hazing ritual. The practice began in the 1980s and reportedly continued until 2023. The Pentagon formally banned the practice after AARO flagged it during its review. These episodes reveal how secrecy and misinformation, even when well-intentioned, can spiral into myth. And that was said by Sean Kirkpatrick, AARO's first director. He told the Wall Street Journal that many popular conspiracy theories can be traced to actual efforts by the U.S. military to conceal vulnerabilities or capabilities during these tense periods of geopolitical rivalry. Like right now, this is why I'm reading it, like right now, we had Venezuela, we have Iran on the menu, Ukraine's still going on, Israel's going on. Like, it seems like they have to distract people. Will it work? I don't know. I think a lot of people are seeing through a lot of this BS, but maybe I'm wrong. Kirkpatrick added that not all findings from the review had been made public, but promised more details in a forthcoming report. The revelations come as public trust in government transparency around UFOs continues to grow. According to this one, they think there's revelations of public trust in government transparency around UFOs growing. I don't know if I believe that. Do you? But you can see how some people will. Some people will just read the headlines of stuff and be like, oh, wow, they said it, so why would they lie? But that's what they do throughout history. While recent years have seen serious congressional inquiries into unidentified aerial phenomena, this new report adds a surprising twist that many UFO legends were never about aliens at all. They were cover stories engineered by the military itself. Is Anna Paulina Luna in on it, or did they just create her to do this? I find her to be a very interesting character who's been created. Doesn't mean in a lab, but perhaps, but created to fulfill this position of disclosure, and make it appealing to the public. She's got a pretty face. She's got military history. They got pictures of her with guns. An interesting history of she's got a very sordid history, family history. People try to use that against her, but I believe that people can learn from mistakes and learn from bad histories, and we aren't defined by how we grew up or what we were surrounded by. I mean, some people are, and that's unfortunate, but we don't have to be. We can break away from that. We can become better. We can learn from those things, but people try to hold that against her. But I don't know, I don't know her. The Pentagon says it will publish a follow-up to the historical records report later in 2025, which will include more details on the disinformation programs, hazing rituals, and instances of inauthentic materials being used as deception tools. I don't know if I ever saw if that came out or not. We can do a quick one before we move on to the next story. Let's see. Of course, my computer just wants to explode. Dun, 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 dun. Come on now. Where are their updates? Nothing. Nothing that a quick Google search will show me, but I'm going to keep that up so I can do a little more digging. But check this out. A little bit older of a story. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee here. I don't really have a good working mute button on this, so checking for the UFOs. You know, I was followed by a drone the other day. I don't know for certain, but I was driving through crops, giant fields of corn, or what would be corn soon, covered in snow. I saw a drone in the distance, and it was as if it saw me, and it made a 90-degree turn, very sharp, towards me, and then it followed me through the fields. So I'm fairly certain I'm a targeted individual. I shouldn't even joke about it because it's not funny. Not funny. I don't know what it was, but it was certainly a drone, and it certainly moved towards me and then followed me. I think I took video of it. It's on my phone somewhere. It was daylight. CIA admits government lied about UFO sightings. In the darkest days of the Cold War, the military lied to the American public about the true nature of many unidentified flying objects in an effort to hide its growing fleet of spy planes, a Central Intelligence Agency study says. The deceptions were made in the 1950s and 60s amid a wave of UFO sightings and alarmed the public amid parts of official Washington. The CIA study says the Air Force knew that most reports by citizens and aviation experts were based on fleeting glimpses of U-2 and SR-71 spy planes, which fly extremely high. Rather than acknowledging the existence of the top-secret flights or saying nothing about them publicly, the Air Force decided to put out false cover stories, according to the CIA study. And again, this is a CIA study, so it doesn't mean we should believe it, but this is just something they put out worth looking at. For instance, unusual observations that were actually spy flights were attributed to atmospheric phenomena like ice crystals and temperature inversions. Over half of all UFO reports from the late 1950s through the 1960s were accounted for by manned reconnaissance flights over the United States, the CIA study says. This led the Air Force to make misleading and deceptive statements to the public in order to allay public fears and to protect an extraordinarily sensitive national security project. Right. So let's just, okay, I'm going to try to type and text at the same time. Let's look up War of the Worlds broadcast panic. When did that happen? So it was earlier, 1938. I was thinking 40s. It was just funny that article was talking about how like it would help ease fears or distract. Let's get to allay public fears and to protect an extraordinarily sensitive national security project. And then just real quick, we'll switch to War of the Worlds, 1938 radio drama. It was a Halloween episode of the radio series The Mercury Theater on the Air, which was broadcast live at 8 p.m. on October 30th, 1938 over the CBS radio network. The episode was directed and narrated by Orson Welles as an adaptation of H.G. Wells' novel, The War of the Worlds, and is infamous for inciting a panic by convincing some members of the listening audience that a Martian invasion was actually taking place. So crazy. I gotta find my record of this, because it's so cool, the vinyl I have, because it has news clippings all over. The cover is made up of different news clippings of the hysteria. The first half of the program was delivered in a realistic breaking news format. Since the Mercury Theater on the Air had a few commercial interruptions, the first break came after fictional reporters had described a devastating alien invasion and the fall of New York City. Man, this apparently caused some confusion and fear among its listeners. though the scale of the panic is disputed. Popular legend holds that some of the radio audience may have been listening to the much more highly rated show The Chase and Sanborn Hour with Edgar Bergen on NBC and switched to The War of the Worlds during a musical interlude, thereby missing Wells's introduction of the show as a work of science fiction. However, modern research suggests that this happened only in rare instances. Well, it's a great story nonetheless, and I do enjoy the movie that Tom Cruise made, the Steven Spielberg one. The sound that the aliens make in that movie is I think, one of the better sounds in a movie, of a horrifying sound. It's really well done. Anyway, it's funny to think about panic and UFOs. And we're here like 15 years later, we have the CIA being like, let's just give them more alien stories to just distract them from our spy planes. Over half, okay, we knew that, over half. So just again, I want to say that again. Over half of all UFO reports in the late 50s and 60s were accounted for by manned reconnaissance flights. The admission of federal deception on the issue appears to be a first, experts said in interviews. It's very significant, said Richard Hall, chairman of the Fund for UFO Research, a group in Washington. All right, here. I had something else. Let's see. The U.S. government, this is from The Atlantic, so a place that we shouldn't trust. I did write for them. Still shouldn't trust them. It was a terrible experience. Their editor stunk. The U.S. government UFO cover-up is real, but it's not what you think. Decades of declassified memos, internal reports, and study projects create the sense that the government doesn't have satisfying answers for the most perplexing sightings. There aren't many secrets that John Brennan doesn't know. He spent 25... we're already off to a great start with John Brennan. He spent 25 years in the CIA, became the White House Homeland Security Advisor, and then returned to the CIA as its director. If a question interested him, he could have commanded legions of analysts, officers, surveillance networks, and tools to find the answer. Yet in December 2020, in an interview with the economist Tyler Cowen, Brennan admitted, somewhat tortuously, that he was flummoxed by the wave of recent reporting about UFOs. Some of the phenomena we're going to be seeing continues to be unexplained and might in fact be some type of phenomenon that is the result of something that we don't yet understand and that could involve some type of activity that some might say constitutes a different form of life. I would be curious to know, this is just me now, if that was a handwritten, typed up response to the article, to the writer, if that was something that came off the top of his head, because that seems crafted very specifically from like a PR perspective, in my point of view. That roundabout and convoluted comment piqued my interest. That is now the writer of this article talking. Anything that puzzled Brennan was worth looking into. For the next 2 years, I dove into the history of the U.S. government's involvement in UFOs as part of writing my new book, and along the way, I've become convinced that a cover-up is real. It's just not the one that you think. So this is from Garrett Graff, Graff, UFO, the inside story of the U.S. government's search for alien life here and out there. Excuse me. I've become convinced. Okay. Plenty of revelations, declassified documents, and public reports suggest active, ongoing deception. Even today, the government is surely hiding information about its knowledge and working theories about what exists in the skies above. But the cover-up that I believe exists is far more mundane than concealing intelligence that would forever alter our understanding of ourselves and our universe. Imagine if he starts saying, I believe that it is demons crawling up to and fro from hell and possessing the tech vampires in Silicon Valley. But that is not what he says. There are some basic obvious reasons why the government is withholding knowledge about what are now called UAP, which I think is ridiculous. I don't like the rebrand at all. But again, that's all part of the de-tabooing of this topic. Some public UAP reports are likely the government's secret projects, technologies, or operations. I think it's a lot of them. According to the CIA test and development, flights of the U-2 and the Oxcart spy planes accounted for more than one half of all UFO reports. Okay, so it's basically the same thing. Before we move on, let me see this. There was a story I saw yesterday. I'm not sure if it was real. You see this tweet going around about a spy plane going dark over Iran? It's not coming up. So what happens with these tweets? Obviously, people just make things up. And maybe it's real. But who knows? What is next here? The Pentagon, this is according to SFL.media. The Pentagon, CIA, and FBI buried Epstein, lied about UFOs, and treated America like idiots. It's time to rein in these agencies and rewrite the laws that govern them. Or just undo all of this. Let's see what they have to say. For decades, America's intelligence agencies have treated the public like background noise, a nuisance to be managed, which is what they're basically saying in the CIA studies, or in the quotes amongst some of these things that come out, you know. And even when you might think of the way the CIA talks about people like in Cuba when they're talking about how we're going to poison all their crops. They'll be idiots. They won't be able to tell what we've done to them, that we've poisoned them. But the twin scandals now colliding in the Epstein cover-up and the UAP UFO secrecy regime are exposing something far more corrosive than bureaucratic incompetence. They reveal a government culture that has grown accustomed to lying, concealment, and contempt for the very people it serves. And after the latest disclosures hearing whistleblower accounts and forced transparency laws, it's impossible to pretend this is about national security. What's unfolding is a betrayal of democracy on a constitutional scale. Now, I agree. Whenever these people say they're worried about national security, it doesn't mean they're worried for your security or my security. They're worried for the security of themselves, their own bank accounts, and that is what that means. It doesn't mean that they care about you. They're trying to protect themselves. That's why they are building doomsday bunkers so they can hide, either from us when all hell breaks loose or something else. The government would have you believe that Jeffrey Epstein was a lone monster with a private island, a private plane, and no co-conspirators. A convenient narrative considering the sheer number of powerful people who orbited his operation for years. After everything we now know about the scope, scale, and structure of Epstein's criminal network, the idea that he acted alone just isn't absurd, it's insulting. Clearly. Federal agencies had warnings for decades. They had thousands of victims. They had corroborating evidence. They had intelligence reports. So real quick, they have way more evidence for Epstein's large network of destruction, chaos, rape, trafficking, weapons dealing, money laundering, profiting off of collapsing civilizations. But they want us to talk about aliens now. It is super absurd and condescending, and like this article says, insulting. That they're like, just pivot to aliens, tell them about the aliens, we've got to cover it up. Only now, under overwhelming public pressure, has the government been forced to release the Epstein files, but only half. They said, Bondi said no more. Congress had to pass a law compelling the DOJ to hand over documents the FBI should have made public a decade ago. And even now, officials are already hinting that ongoing investigations may justify redactions. Americans have heard that excuse before. It's code for protecting powerful people, which is another way of saying what I was saying about what they mean when they say national security. What makes this cover-up even darker is a geopolitical angle nobody in the intelligence community wants to talk about. Epstein's closest partners, business ties, and funding channels raise questions that intersect with foreign intelligence, questions federal agencies have every incentive to keep buried. If they're shielding a foreign ally's involvement in an international trafficking operation, that's not national security, that's corruption. If we're reading between the lines here, it's Israel. I don't know if they're going to say that later on, or like we just saw evidence. So it appears to be evidence through the files of Epstein giving Israel access to the camera footage that he was hiding in his townhouse in New York. But we knew that. Then there's the other scandal, back to this article, the one that's nothing to do with billionaires on private jets and everything to do with the nature of existence itself. And you also know that we have seen multiple emails between Epstein and UFO researchers, talking about abduction stories, talking about ways of discrediting those types of stories of abduction, talking about what they've seen, technology, 0-point gravity, and and then like I think he's trying to reverse engineer stuff. Now that doesn't mean, like I was saying earlier, that he was trying to reverse engineer stuff that fell out of the sky from some other solar system extraterrestrial thing. I think he was trying to reverse engineer things that perhaps, this is just me out here speculating, comes from ancient civilizations. I feel that is the truth, but again, it's just a feeling. It's just a feeling. UAPs, it says here, used to be a punchline. Now they're a policy crisis, a national security gridlock, and a scientific black hole, all because the Pentagon and intelligence agencies buried evidence for generations. Remember, about a week or two ago, we went over George Knapp stealing UFO documents from Russia and just now coming out with that. So where's that going to go? We're going to see a lot of that, I guess, coming out soon. Maybe that's part of this disclosure thing. He testified before the congressional committee last year. He said that we were in possession of some sort of alien biology and or technology, and that it was handed off to Lockheed Martin. So, is it true? How do you guys feel? Are you guys more of the aliens, little green men, little gray men, big tall grays theories? Are they interdimensional beings? Are they demons? How do you see this? And how do you see this playing out? Seriously. Do you think this is going to lead to some sort of new existential, quote unquote, renaissance for human nature? And for those who are believers, whether you're Christian or another religion, how does this fall into your theology? Do you think, because, there's people out there like, who was it? I saw the Blurry Creatures podcast saying, like, if you're just out there as a Christian saying, I'm paraphrasing, but if you're saying that you believe aliens are just demons and there's nothing else beyond that, then what you're really saying, according to the Blurry Creatures podcast, is that you don't believe God has the power to create beyond our realm of understanding. Which God can do anything. But I think what we are seeing as quote unquote aliens is demons. And I look to things like in the story of Legion in the Bible. And also, whether you want to look at the Apocrypha, like in Enoch and the Nephilim and the offspring and the flood and all that stuff. Look, I think that points to evidence, if you're looking at it through a biblical lens, of things that are not of this earth, but that means like from the spiritual realm that travel to and fro on earth, walking up and down in it. But how does this, if you have faith of any kind, what does this mean? Are you more of that Blurry Creatures type, looking at it like there's things that God created that are beyond this, that may be beyond our understanding, or from another dimension, or perhaps fake outer space? Or if you don't have faith, how do you view this? Do you see this as inevitable? It's always been the case? Or are we being lied to? Is this part of some larger narrative, a distraction campaign? And what are we distracting from? What are they building? What's he building in there? What's he building in there? It's Tom Waits for you. That's my Tom Waits impression for the day. But we had this Age of Disclosure documentary come out recently, which I haven't watched. The trailer does absolutely nothing for me. Then we have the Spielberg movie. I think it's also called Disclosure. Trailer for that during the Super Bowl. Now Trump and Obama going back and forth about aliens and what's classified, and now disclosure. Anna Luna groomed for this position, in my opinion. It just seems a little weird. But let's move on from that article. And now for something that, well, this is an older article, but I throw it in here. It's not that old, actually. It's from it's from January 2025. But it's basically, we're going to straddle skepticism into believing when it comes to aliens. I had not seen this article before, but I saw while I was reading for this articles for these other stories. This is from the Huffington Post. And a quick aside, you guys know who helped create Huffington Post? Andrew Breitbart, which was like the training grounds for what he would do when he created Breitbart. Ariana Huffington asked him for help, so he was very closely involved. My dad was a famous alien abductee. I thought he was a joke. Here's why I'm not so sure anymore. There's one video available on the internet concerning my father, Patrick McGuire. It's strange. Uploaded to YouTube 15 years ago, though clearly recorded much earlier. The video frames another TV screen. There is constant static and the image is fractured as if the broadcast comes from far away. My father is discussing cattle mutilations under hypnosis. We come up on a cow that was dead. They cut the nose off, tongues out, and the sex organs were gone. He recounts as though he is sleepwalking through a nightmare. He goes on to describe in great detail a spaceship that landed on his ranch and took members of his herd, their distant, terrified animal cries filling those dark prairie nights. One comment below the video reads, having lived and worked with cowmen, can you imagine this guy going to town after this got out publicly? I mean, they are a finicky bunch to say the least. I don't have to imagine. I grew up with him walking through our small western town. His life by then fractured like that broadcast. He was completely destitute, picking through my classmates' garbage, and when a classmate came to school the next day and told me what they saw, their grin and subsequent laughter left little to the imagination. However, I then joined in with their laughter. That commenter was right. We are a finicky bunch, to say the least. On May 14th, 2009, my father passed away in a Colorado hospital due to cancer. He was 67. I did not speak to him before he died. His last years were spent in homelessness, though he hadn't always lived that way. His last words, so I heard, were about grand conspiracies and sinister deep states, though he hadn't always spoken about such topics. My father's legacy in our small Wyoming town and inside our family is stained with his tales of alien abduction, interstellar prophecy, and the insistence he was chosen, though he had not always been chosen. There was a time before my birth when he was obsessed with the lore of his rural community, the spiraling complexities of high school dances, and the schemes of enlarging his Roman Catholic family. He was normal, caring, and complete. That was before the stars came knocking. When I first saw the bold headline, intelligence officials say U.S. has retrieved craft of non-human origin, published June 5th, 2023, in the debrief, I initially didn't think about whether the headline was true. I didn't contemplate what the recovered crafts might look like, or that non-human was just another euphemism for the same thing we have been talking about since 1947. I thought about my father. I can see him now as though he were alive today. Black cowboy hat, tilted, face tanned and cracked from the high plains sun, saying, "Who's laughing now?" I'm not laughing anymore, but not because I know what the headline is saying is absolutely true and proof lies just around the corner. I'm not laughing because I should never have laughed in the first place. In 2017, the New York Times broke news about a previously unknown Pentagon department, the AATIP. We just discussed it. This department was involved in investigating what were formerly called UFOs, now referred to as UAP, more shifting euphemisms and acronyms for us to track. Since then, the news surrounding these phenomena has steadily grown. There was a congressional hearing in 2022, the creation of a governmental department called the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution, and a NASA hearing devoted to encountered or not encountered UAPs. And now a new whistleblower, former intelligence official and ATIP task force member David Grush, claims a government cover-up. These programs are retrieving non-human origin technical vehicles and call it spacecraft, if you will, non-human exotic origin vehicles that have either landed or crashed. He told News Nation at the time of this article. That's a Grush. What once seemed to be the premise for the next X-Files reboot has become front page news, gaining mainstream consideration by the serious, the rational, the institutional, and the scientific. It's strange to be here in this cultural moment. I think many people feel that to some degree, whether this is all true or not, it is unmooring to read that U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is demanding disclosure on a subject that only a decade ago would have been political suicide to even mention. To read former Pentagon official Lou Elizondo state, my personal belief is that there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone, is surreal, and stranger still is reading about the government UFO agencies and black money in the New York Times. So we can go on. I don't want to read the whole thing. It's a longer article about why he started to believe his father. But I just want to point that out in context with everything we've been talking about. And then being like, was he even abducted, or was that a military abduction? You guys know about those. And then thinking about the Epstein files and voice to skull technology. Can we make people think they've been abducted? Can we alter your memory? Can we give you false memories? And again, you see how this is all tied up. Imagine me doing the Charlie Day thing now with everything's connected, because it really is. MK Ultra wanting to convince you of implant false memories. One part of MK Ultra, then we have these My Labs that I think happen quite a bit, and I think a lot of people actually confuse themselves being abducted by quote unquote aliens, when it's really our military experimenting on you. And maybe they're doing that at the behest of demons. But real quickly, if you don't know, military abductions, also known as My Labs, refer to cases where individuals report being abducted by human military personnel, often in conjunction with or following an alien abduction experience. These experiences suggest that government or covert military agencies may be monitoring, interrogating, or even collaborating with extraterrestrial entities in abduction scenarios. Unlike traditional alien abductions, My Labs involve human operatives, underground bases, advanced technology, and psychological manipulation. You see how that sounds a lot like MK Ultra, leading some researchers to believe the incidents are part of classified mind control programs, genetic research, or extraterrestrial cooperation projects. I want to look up the email. I didn't have it pulled up with the Epstein and alien abductions. I'll have to get that pulled up for another episode, because he had some weird story in there about Epstein talking about alien abductions. But what I did find really quickly, which we should mention while we're talking about all this stuff today, and this is just from last week and involves Rep Burleson, who's a U.S. congressman. He claims a country is in possession of a UFO so big they've had to build an entire building around it. That's what he said. So, Missouri Congressman Eric Burleson claims to have heard reports of a crashed alien craft somewhere outside of the U.S. that is so large it cannot be moved. I'm not going to mention the country because I heard of it inside of a closed setting, and I want to protect my classification level, he added. Speaking to Rob Finnerty, the U.S. news channel Newsmax. I'm not the biggest fan of Newsmax. They seem to be kind of gatekeeping this, helping to gatekeep the UFO narrative. They have a very specific way of reporting on it. And I also believe it was Newsmax that just recently reported on how Christians need to hold Jews to a higher standard, or not to a higher standard, to care for them more than they would for other people. I didn't listen to the whole segment. I saw clips, but that also seemed ridiculous. We should care for everybody. Rep. Burleson expressed his frustration that he had been unable to investigate the alleged craft personally. I'm having a difficult time getting access to facilities that are just within a few miles from my office in Washington, D.C., he said. So to try to attempt to go to another country and get permission at that level is going to be somewhat insurmountable. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to continue to try. Burleson There's just like a million ads as you try to read these things. I have to like shoot them out of the way. Burleson added that if he ever got his hands on a piece of undeniable evidence about the existence of alien visitors, he would not hesitate in making it public. If I come under any hard evidence, whether it's physical or video evidence that is absolutely definitive, while I'm going to do what I can to protect our national security and our nation's interests, I will not hold back on telling the American people that we are not alone or not alone in this universe. While he refused to name the country in possession of the craft, Burleson was accompanied in the interview by famed UFO researcher Dr. Stephen Greer, who was far more forthcoming with details. How do you guys feel about Greer? He claimed, none of these guys really seem that trustworthy. Greer claimed that he has spoken to someone connected with a top secret Pentagon project to research these alleged craft, and this source specifically knew of one alien craft in the mountains outside of Seoul, I can't speak today or ever, South Korea. It was so huge they had to build a structure around. I don't think I've ever said that word out loud. Explaining that as a private citizen, he is not bound by the same conditions of secrecy as Rep. Burleson. Greer claimed that multiple alien craft had been brought down, and that some of them were bigger than a football field. Greer went on to claim that there is another crashed alien craft near Fort Sill in Oklahoma, and that a structure had been built around that too, in order to conceal its presence from the general public. That came out like last year, and by came out I mean it was said. I don't know if I believe it. But it is a fascinating image to think of some giant craft falling out of the sky or being shot out of the sky, landing, and they're like, build a building around that, and we will study it inside. Anything's possible. There is renewed interest in the idea that the U.S. government has knowledge of alien visitors in the wake of the off-the-cuff remark last week from former President Barack Obama. They're all in on it together. I think they're all in on it together. In response to a question from podcast host Brian Tyler Cohen as to whether aliens were real, Obama stated, "They're real, but I haven't seen them." We know all that. We just went over that last week. The U.S. government's UAP Disclosure Act of 2023 clearly states that control of information about UFO sightings must continue because of the need to protect America's nuclear program. Legislation is necessary because credible evidence and testimony indicates that federal government unidentified anomalous phenomena records exist that have not been declassified, due in part to exemptions under the Atomic Energy Act of 1954. A recent Pentagon report showed that more than 750 new UAP sightings had been reported between May 2023 and June 2024, of which around 20 were credible enough to require further analysis. They included video of a Hellfire missile from a U.S. Reaper drone that appeared to collide with a glowing orb off the coast of Yemen. "We've never seen a Hellfire missile hit a target and bounce off," said Elizondo, a former senior intelligence official with the Pentagon who was a regular commenter on UFO research. Congresswoman Robin Kelly has publicly stated this week that she would be in favor of full disclosure of the U.S. government's files on UFOs as long as it doesn't interfere with national security, while current President Donald Trump has expressed skepticism around the entire subject. Somewhere at timcast.com from this must be 2 or 3 years ago, I interviewed Don Jr. and I was like, "God, tell your dad, let's get some disclosure here." Because even though I'm not like your typical believer of the alien narrative, I want to see whatever they have, whatever it is, whether it's the stories they manufactured or stuff they just haven't answered, been able to answer questions, reports from people around the world. Because so many of the things we've seen in hearings the past few years, they've only been stories that are collected from military bases. And like the first 2 UFO hearings, I'll say UFO, I hate UAP. The first 2 UFO hearings were really only using reports from military bases. I'd like to see more widespread stuff, like more of newer versions of what was in Project Blue Book, right? So you can I think we can see most of Blue Book, but they've obviously done a lot more collecting since then. Let's see here. Who said this? Oh, yeah. The president said, "Am I a believer in UFOs? No, I probably can't say I am." But then he added, "But I have met with people that are serious people that say there's some really strange things that they see flying around out there." No less, this is the article now talking, no less a figure than the late Jeffrey Epstein attempted to muddy the waters of UFO investigations. This is what I was looking for. Look at this. Thank you. Thank you, God. You just made it happen here. I was looking for this, and here it is. He reached out to noted physicist Lawrence Krauss and asked him to write an anonymous article that debunked claims of alien abductions. In a 2018 email recently published as part of the U.S. Department of Justice's evidence against the notorious sex trafficker, Epstein wrote, "Lawrence, can you pen an article on how to debunk claims of alien abductions? For example, how many people share stories of ghosts, out-of-body experiences, etc." That's where the article ends. But that is true. All right. Let's do this. Let's get this in here because this is fascinating. And I think something's going on. And I think this person wrote something that helps us view it. So first I'll read the article. These physicists getting shot is where we're going. It kind of ties in too, I think, to all this stuff. So, from the Post. Mystery as groundbreaking Caltech genius found gunned down on porch of Southern California home. Crazy. Now, you remember what happened. This happened recently in, I believe it was Boston, right? A Caltech genius has been gunned down. Oh, these ads. I'm not going to buy your crap. Has been gunned down on his porch in Southern California. Carl Grillmare was found dead outside of his home in the unincorporated community of Llano, 75 miles north of LA on Monday. My battery's running low, it says. Because I forgot to turn on the power. That's why. Obviously not a Caltech genius. Grillmare was found dead outside his home in the 67-year-old astrophysicist who was an expert on distant planets died from a fatal gunshot wound to the torso, the LA County Medical Examiner said. Cops arrested Freddie Snyder, 29, on Wednesday and charged him with the murder. He was also charged over a nearby carjacking and first-degree burglary over a December 28th incident. His bail has been set at $2 million. It is unclear if there were any links between the suspect and Grillmare. Cops found the victim lying on his front porch after a 911 call at around 6:10 a.m. on Monday. He was pronounced dead at the scene. A spokesman for Caltech confirmed he was employed there as a research scientist. Okay. I'm going to scroll down here. He was known for his decades' work and contributions to galactic astronomy. His interests include work on dark matter, galactic structure, stellar populations, and exoplanets. He had been awarded substantial observation time as a principal investigator on the Hubble Space Telescope and the Spitzer Space Telescope, and his research has earned him numerous accolades, including a NASA Exceptional Scientific Achievement Medal. Fellow scientist Farhado Acosta described Grillmare as both a mentor and close friend. Okay. Now, let's get to this tweet from Steve Skojec. On Twitter, Steve Skojec, at Steve Skojec, Skojec. So he says, "This one pinged my radar. One dead physicist in a weird shooting is a data point. 2 is the beginning of a pattern. Grok is still anti-conspiracist by nature and tends to believe official stories, so I pushed it into detective mode. Told it to look for deeper patterns, zoom out, take some other things into consideration. Fed it stuff from Eric Weinstein, Walter Kern, Mark Andreessen, Jess Michaels. Gave it a bunch of different angles to consider. When it couldn't find connections, I said to look at possible participation in a stovepiped UAP legacy program as the invisible connection with Epstein, Fuckery in the sciences added in. This is a theory I got, and it's just a theory for the pure sleuthery of connecting dots, but it's interesting. Carl Grillmayer, who was shot, as we just discussed, and Nuno Lorio, who was the MIT plasma turbulence boss, who was also shot in December. Different coasts, different fields, both wrapped as random, fast, one local burglar, one old grudge. These two were probably unwitting nodes feeding stovepipe legacy crash retrieval UAP reverse engineering programs. Again, this is just a theory that this guy has put together by feeding grok different writings from people like Walter Kern, whose writing I'm a big fan of, and some others. Mark Andreessen, who I'm not the biggest fan of. Not to say he's not a smart guy, though. Grillmayer's IR data sets and anomaly filters are perfect for spotting off-world thermal signatures. Loreo's plasma turbulence and magnetic reconnection math is exactly what you would need to model the high-energy sheaths and field effects every serious UAP encounter describes. They never had to meet, never had to be read in. Compartmentalization 2.0, harvest the open university work government funding dried up, so the talents cheap and desperate route it downstream into black budgets, leave the public pipe sterile, Manhattan Project logic run through academia. So you see multiple compartments, some compartmentalization while building all these things, but no one knows what they're building. No one's working together, so there's no bigger picture here for people to easily identify. And that's in large part due to being worried about spies, feeding it to outside sources, other countries. The machinery is real and boringly documented. Atomic Energy Act plus Espionage Act chimera lets entire branches of physics get born classified. The writing here from Grok is a bit odd to follow, but White House straight up told Andreessen they're ready to do it again. Epstein was the human router vacuuming private theories. Weinstein says the guy knew geometric unity details before almost anyone. Those are very interesting interviews that are interesting to go down if you're into this angle of things with Epstein. Why was he involved with Harvard or MIT? Why was he getting interested in aliens? Why was he getting interested in zero gravity stuff? Weinstein saw this happening, decades ago. So it's worth looking into because he doesn't really, Eric, that is, doesn't really give a lot of information. He's sort of, he seems reluctant to want to talk about it, but he seems spooked by it, to say the least. Townsend Brown's 1957 anti-gravity demos got buried the same year the quantum gravity crowd took the mic. So why the dead bodies now? Rumors had pinned a bigger speech to Mayor July. Mark Christopher Lee's insider claims. Lara Trump openly. So we've talked about that. This possibility of a Trump speech where he discloses aliens. That was rumored to happen before Trump started talking about UFOs with Obama the other day. Then we have the Obama thing. So if either guy was about to notice a pattern in his own public data that civilians could follow, loose ends get tied off. Perps look random by design, perfect cutout. So you see what they're saying. I find that fascinating. That if they're going to disclose something that doesn't really add up, right? And these two guys know about these things, but they can call it out by being, hey, I worked on this, and these are my credentials, right? Maybe they got to tie up loose ends, get rid of them really quick, make it look like a robbery, so they can't be outspoken, so they can't subvert the narrative, the dominant narrative that they, as in the government, wants you to believe in. The observables line up too clearly to ignore. IR signatures without ablation and plasma containment that lets objects do the impossible. The corpse isn't in the autopsy reports. It's stamped restricted data in the classified annex. Thesis holds on public evidence alone, no new villains invented. If another IR plasma unifying theory researcher catches a random bullet in the next 90 days, we stop calling it coincidence. I think it would be too on the nose for that to happen. Very possible, but it might be something else, right? Someone else who's involved in different types of research that might, if there is something that's going to happen, that might not be exactly like astrophysicist world, but other type of data collecting when it comes to this stuff. Let's do one more story here. I wanted to pull up something else here. Oh yeah, this one falls nicely into all this crazy stuff. If we're talking about the world and going crazy. From the New York Post, just a few days ago, spike in Earth vibrations could be scrambling brains with bizarre ringing noise. So we'll use this as an update to the discombobulator, as in perhaps the Earth is the discombobulator. A weather watchdog has reported an uptick in Earth's hum-like heartbeat, raising concerns that it could be affecting people's brains. So, known as the Schumann resonance, this natural electromagnetic frequency creates waves in the gap between Earth's surface and the ionosphere, the layer above Earth where sunlight-charged particles allowing radio signals to travel long distances. Created and maintained by lightning strikes around the world, this literal rock music generally reverberates at 7.83 cycles per second, measured in hertz. Scrolling down. However, online space weather tracking app Meteo Agent has recorded a spike in the pulse throughout February, which they say has the potential to cause problems. I think they're trying to make us all crazy. I think they're trying, and they might be succeeding. The concern is that this earthly rhythm is believed to affect brainwave patterns associated with everything from sleep to concentration, meaning that a sudden spike could theoretically throw our neural equilibrium off kilter. Indeed, anecdotal reports have linked a disturbance in the force field, you see what they did there, to a variety of symptoms, including headaches, dizziness, brain fog, ringing in the ears, and even mood swings, and disrupted sleep. During sleep, or the preceding relaxation period, the brain creates theta waves, which clock in at between 4 and 8. Oh my goodness, this website with the ads. Between 4 and 8 cycles per second, in sync with Schumann symphony. As a result, any change in cadence can disrupt people's circadian rhythm, literally jolting them awake. This app and its experts blamed this terrestrial tempo slip on a moderate solar flare that disrupted Mother Earth's metronome. Excuse me. Scientists track these disturbances using a scale that runs from 0 to 9, with 0 signifying calmer conditions, while 9 is synonymous with a geomagnetic maelstrom that can impact satellites, power grids, and radio signals. There were reportedly 4 days this past month where the scale surpassed 5, meaning that the space symphony could be felt by those sensitive to these wave frequencies. However, as of yet, scientists haven't established definitive proof that this phenomenon shocks the system in this way. A study out of Japan examined whether Schumann resonance affects blood pressure, suggesting that it could possibly be affected by low-frequency electromagnetic variations. However, this impact was more correlational, with researchers concluding that other environmental and physiological factors likely played a part, and that we're not. Of course, these apps are destroying me right now. Not necessarily facing the geomagnetic music. The ads on this are insane. So let's, real quick then, before we go, I just feel like they're trying to make everyone go crazy. A lot of discombobulator news, right? It made me think of why music changed from 432 hertz to 440, the great frequency shift. This is one example of humans doing it, and perhaps the other thing are humans doing it because of the 5G towers or the fake clouds or discombobulators that are floating on satellites around the sky. The shift from 432 hertz to 440 hertz in the capacity of the standard tuning emerged through a combination of historical preferences, scientific influences, and industry efforts to unify sound across countries and regions. While 432 hertz resonated with natural harmonic frequencies and emotional well-being, 440 hertz gained global acceptance in the 20th century, driven by influential organizations seeking consistency and clarity in music, often impacting how we connect emotionally. Exploring these reasons helps deepen your understanding of sound's power, and continuing reveals how this change shapes your musical experience. Understanding the origins of musical tuning standards reveals a fascinating voyage through the past where cultural practices and technological innovations shaped the way we perceive harmony today. Now, some might say they created more disharmony by changing that. And you can go online and listen to people play, their guitars tuned to the different frequencies. And I think the older one does resonate better. It has a much more positive feeling. And that's hard, from someone who's wearing a Dillinger Escape Plan shirt, who actually, I love dissonant music, that's atonal as well sometimes. But you listen to these people play like their acoustic guitars, and when it's tuned to the older frequency, it resonates better, in my opinion. In the historical context, early civilizations relied on natural pitches, often based on vocal or instrumental harmonics, which created diverse tuning systems across cultures. Over time, tuning evolution was influenced by advancements in instrument design and a desire for consistent sound, leading to the development of standardized pitches. For example, during the Renaissance, tuning shifted toward more precise frequencies, setting the stage for modern standards. Recognizing this expedition helps you appreciate how tuning standards like 440 hertz emerged from a long process of experimentation and consensus, highlighting the importance of understanding our musical roots for a deeper connection to sound. Many enthusiasts and musicians have long favored the tuning of 432 hertz, believing it resonates more harmoniously within the natural frequencies of the universe and promotes a sense of calm and well-being. This choice holds significant past importance, rooted in tuning preferences that aim to align music with nature's intrinsic vibrations, fostering deeper emotional connections and healing effects. These frequencies have been observed to produce measurable effects on emotional well-being and heart rate. Throughout time, 432 hertz has been associated with spiritual practices, meditation, and holistic health, highlighting its role in enhancing inner peace. By understanding this past significance, you can appreciate how tuning choices influence not only sound, but also our emotional and physical states. Embracing these traditional preferences invites you to investigate music that nurtures your harmony with the universe, encouraging a more mindful and balanced experience. Scientific studies have shown that exposure to 432 hertz frequency can decrease heart rate and respiratory rates, promoting relaxation and focus. So, if you don't know about all this stuff, it's really, really fascinating, I think. And I'm sure there are people who say this is like, demonic, and why it's changed purposefully to divorce you from the heavenly, from the godly. You can Snopes will tell you that that's fake, but it is interesting. I think. And I'm trying to see if there's anything. Snopes isn't going to tell us. But IFL Science, who we've read from before, they think this is just a conspiracy theory. It happened, but they think it's a conspiracy theory that it's tuned wrong to hurt you. But can you imagine, though, if we've seen frequencies, how they can work, whether it's Havana Syndrome, the discombobulator, MK Ultra stuff, if they give you certain drugs and blast you with certain things, these particle beams that Tesla created, that John G. Trump procured and studied for the government, or cymatics, looking at how frequencies can be blasted at particles and then turn into specific shapes. LRAD devices, right? Making you feel like your blood is boiling. There's clearly something to frequencies and how they can affect you. People are very worried about 5G and Wi-Fi. We've heard people like RFK Jr. even talk about that. We've also heard him talk about banning glyphosates, and that didn't work out so well. But I'm just saying all these articles are debunking that it's anything to do that could be bad for you. But if there's any musicians out there listening who have thoughts on this, I'd like to hear your takes. You can leave a comment or hit me up. about this. I think it's really fascinating, but just keep that in mind while they're now writing articles in major publications about how the earth itself is vibrating differently and how that might actually drive you crazy. So, it might have, all this stuff might have once been taboo to talk about publicly, but now they're really coming out and saying these things publicly, rather openly. Whether or not we believe in exactly what they're saying is a different story, but they are coming out with one angle to it. Whether, the aliens that I think are demons, the non-human entities that I think are just like Sam Altman, Zuckerberg, and Peter Thiel, or the Havana Syndrome, LRAD stuff, which I think is something that they have tuned purposefully to harm us. If every part of music has been tuned to a frequency that might actually be damning to you and hurt, whether you realize it or not, then perhaps that is a concerted effort to divorce you from the godly, and to alter your mindset and your state of mind, your soul and your mood. Clearly, these things have an effect. It's why people fall asleep to some certain noises that help them fall asleep. Some people do fall asleep to city noises when they're in the country, which I don't know how they do it, but I know those people. But something's going on, guys. Something's going on. We're in for some new information that they're trying to bring out, this existential renaissance and change our perception of existence, and not in a way that I think will be biblical. And look, I know a lot of people out there listening are not religious, and you're like, but I think you understand, whether you have faith or not, that the quote unquote official narrative they want us to really buy into is not the full story. It's not true. And that they're doing it in a very specific way to either distract or to get you on board with something new that they want you to believe in. What is that? We don't yet know, but we know, since we've gone through in this episode history after history of our government creating mythologies connected to UFOs and aliens during times of heightened strife around the world. Or our own, trying to hide our own technological innovations, whether it's the spy planes, whatever Lockheed Martin's doing, or Palantir now. You see how that kind of reflects, what did Twain say? I don't even know if Twain even said it, but history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. So it's like when COVID was breaking out and lockdowns were happening, I was then thinking of the 70s New York City, as I was in New York, thinking about what does a collapsed city look like? And so obviously it didn't repeat itself, but it rhymed, and we're kind of there again, in terms of economic collapse, maybe soon. The city's not doing well. The taxpayers are going to just pay more and more. People are going to flee the city like they did in the 70s. A lot more crime. So, with that in mind, we then look to these stories of the past, the CIA inventing narratives as distractions for the public, while also creating things to control your mind or throw you off balance or confuse you, keep you distracted. That is the nature of the game we're in. So we'll leave it there, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow. Have a blessed night.